In Willowvale, Vermont, a miracle happened that changed the course of many lives. This is the story of Jeremy Gardner, a skilled HVAC technician and single father who was drowning in debt after his wife's passing. When elderly Mildred Wells called about her broken heater before a devastating winter storm, Jeremy fixed it at minimal cost, despite his own financial troubles. What he didn't know was that Mildred was actually Josephine Wells, billionaire CEO of the Wells Foundation, living undercover to find deserving people for her charitable initiatives. As Jeremy continued helping Mildred through the brutal winter, property developer Douglas Fletcher threatened to foreclose on Jeremy's home while pressuring Mildred to sell her land. When the worst storm in 50 years hit and Mildred's life was endangered, Jeremy risked everything to save her, unaware that this act of selflessness would not only transform his life, but the entire town of Willowvale. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The final notice from First National Bank of Willowvale stared back at Jeremy Gardner as he stood in his kitchen, the red letters seeming to pulsate with each passing second. 30 days. That's all he had left before the bank would foreclose on the small house that had been in his family for 3 generations. The home where his father had taught him to fix his first furnace. The home where he'd proposed to Christina. The home where he'd promised his dying wife he would raise their daughter. Dad, are you making breakfast, or are you just going to stare at that letter all morning? Olivia's voice broke through his thoughts, her tone carrying a wisdom beyond her 12 years. Jeremy quickly folded the notice and tucked it into his pocket. Sorry, Pumpkin. Got distracted. How about some pancakes? Olivia smiled, though her eyes, so much like her mother's, held a knowing look. You don't have to hide it. I know we're having money problems. Nothing for you to worry about, Jeremy said, pulling ingredients from the cupboard. Their contents were getting sparse. I've got some promising jobs lined up. We'll be fine. That's what you said last month, Olivia noted, sitting at the kitchen table. The aging wood creaked beneath her weight, another reminder of all the repairs Jeremy couldn't afford to make. And the month before that? Jeremy mixed the pancake batter with more force than necessary. Well, this time I mean it. His phone rang, saving him from further discussion. The caller ID showed Wilson's Auto Shop. Hey, Brian, Jeremy answered, grateful for the interruption. Morning, Jer. Listen, Olivia still need a ride to school. Tracy's heading that way with our kids. Jeremy glanced at his ancient pickup truck. Through the window, the check engine light had been on for weeks. That would be great, actually. My truck's being temperamental again. No problem. And hey, I talked to Mr. Peterson at the hardware store. He might have some work for you. Something about the store's heating system making strange noises. I'll stop by today. Thanks, Brian. After ending the call, Jeremy turned back to find Olivia taking over the pancake preparation. She flipped one with expert precision, a skill Christina had taught her during those long weekend mornings before the cancer diagnosis changed everything. I can do that, Jeremy protested weakly. You always burn them, Olivia replied matter-of-factly. Besides, you need to get ready for work. Jeremy's work consisted of whatever HVAC jobs he could scrounge up after his father's once thriving business had dwindled following Harold's death 3 years ago. Between caring for Olivia, paying Christina's medical bills, and trying to keep the business afloat, Jeremy had watched his savings evaporate like condensation on a summer day. After breakfast, Tracy Wilson arrived with her kids. Jeremy noticed the way Tracy glanced around their home, taking in the worn furniture and peeling wallpaper. Her eyes held sympathy, not judgment, but it stung nevertheless. I'm helping at the school book fair today, Tracy said as Olivia collected her backpack. I can bring Olivia home too, if you'll be working late. Thanks, Jeremy nodded, ashamed at how often he relied on the Wilsons' help these days. After they left, Jeremy gathered his tools and headed to his truck. It sputtered reluctantly to life on the third attempt. The dashboard was a Christmas tree of warning lights, but he didn't have time to worry about that now. Peterson's hardware came first, then he'd check his answering machine for any other potential jobs. As he drove through Willowvale, Jeremy passed the newly erected billboard showcasing Fletcher Estates, luxury living coming soon. Douglas Fletcher's smiling face dominated one corner of the sign, his perfect teeth and tailored suit representing everything Jeremy wasn't. Fletcher Development had been buying up properties all over town, turning modest homes into upscale condominiums that no original Willowvale resident could afford. Speaking of the devil, Jeremy muttered as he spotted Douglas Fletcher's Mercedes parked outside the mayor's office. No doubt lobbying for another zoning change. At Peterson's hardware, George. Peterson greeted him warmly. "Jeremy, thanks for coming so quickly. That furnace in the back is making the most awful racket, scaring away customers." Jeremy followed the older man to the storage area, where an ancient furnace wheezed and clanked. After a thorough inspection, Jeremy identified the problem: a failing blower motor and several worn belts. "I can fix it today if you have the time," Jeremy offered, "though the parts will run about $200. Peterson winced. "That much?" Fletcher's people offered to install a whole new system as part of their renovation package. "Fletcher's people?" Jeremy asked, his stomach sinking. "Yeah, he's offering upgrades to businesses that sign leases in his new commercial complex, trying to get everyone to relocate from Main Street and leave downtown empty for his bulldozers." Jeremy completed the thought. "Look, Mr. Peterson, a new system would cost thousands. I can fix this one for $225 total, parts and labor." Peterson considered this. "You always were fair, just like your father. All right, do it." "I'm not ready to be beholden to Fletcher anyway." As Jeremy worked, his phone rang again, an unfamiliar number. "Gardner Heating and Cooling," he answered, trying to sound professional. "Is this Jeremy Gardner?" An elderly woman's voice came through. The line, "Yes, ma'am, how can I help you? My name is Mildred Wells. I moved into the old Bennett cottage on Cedar Lane last month. My heater won't start, and with that storm coming in..." Jeremy checked his watch. He could finish Peterson's repair and still make it to Cedar Lane before dark. "I can come by around 4, Miss Wells." Oh, thank goodness. The house is getting quite chilly already. After completing the hardware store job, Jeremy drove to Cedar Lane. The Bennett cottage was actually a small, somewhat dilapidated farmhouse set back from the road. It had been vacant for years, and Jeremy was surprised anyone had moved in, especially an elderly woman living alone. He knocked on the door, which was opened by a small, white-haired woman with alert blue eyes and a cardigan wrapped tightly around her thin frame. "Ms. Wells?" "I'm Jeremy Gardner." "Right on time," she nodded, approvingly. "Please come in and call me Mildred." The interior of the cottage was sparsely furnished but meticulously clean. A few cardboard boxes remained unpacked in corners. What struck Jeremy most was the lack of photographs or personal items. It looked like a temporary living situation. "You moved in recently?" Jeremy asked, following her to the utility room. "Yes, just a month ago. I wanted somewhere quiet after my husband passed. The thermostat's over here." Jeremy examined the heating system, a relatively modern unit that seemed out of place in the old house. He traced the issue to a faulty ignition switch and damaged wiring. A quick fix. "Someone's been working on this recently," Jeremy noted. "These wires have been cut, not worn through." Mildred's eyebrows rose. "How strange." The rental agency said everything was in working order. Jeremy completed the repair in under an hour. As he was packing up his tools, Mildred brought him a cup of tea. "I don't have much in the way of groceries yet, but I can offer tea." "Thank you," Jeremy said, accepting the cup. He noticed her hands were well manicured, not what he'd expect from someone living in such modest circumstances. "So, how did you end up in Willowvale?" Research, Mildred answered, then seemed to catch herself. I researched small towns, wanted somewhere peaceful for my golden years. Jeremy nodded, though something felt off about her explanation. Well, it's normally peaceful, though there's been some tension lately with all the development. Plans? Yes, I've noticed the signs. Mr. Fletcher has quite ambitious plans for this area. Too ambitious, if you ask most locals, Jeremy sighed. He's been pressuring people to sell, especially those who've fallen on hard times. People like you, Mildred asked softly. Jeremy looked up, surprised by her perception. What makes you say that? The patches on your coat, the aging truck outside, the way you checked your watch. 3 times while working, probably worrying about your next job. I'm old, Mr. Gardner, not blind. Jeremy felt heat rise to his face. Times have been tough since my wife passed. Medical bills, plus raising Olivia alone. Your daughter? Yes, she's 12. Smart as a whip. Too smart sometimes. Mildred smiled. Children often see more than we give them credit for. She reached for her purse. Now, what do I owe you? Jeremy calculated quickly. Parts were $45 plus labor. Call it $85 total. Mildred looked at him sharply. That seems too little. It was a simple fix, Jeremy shrugged, and I charge fair prices. Always have, always will. He didn't mention that his competitors would have charged triple. Mildred handed him $100. Keep the change, and here's my number. I have a feeling. This old house might need more attention as winter sets in. As Jeremy drove home, the snow began to fall, the first of what meteorologists predicted would be a harsh winter. He called Tracy to check on Olivia, then stopped at the grocery store, using Mr. Peterson's payment to stock up on essentials. At the checkout, he found himself behind Beverly Fletcher, Douglas's wife, her cart filled with gourmet items. She glanced at Jeremy's modest selections, pasta, ground beef, canned vegetables, with barely concealed disdain. Jeremy, she acknowledged with a tight smile. How's the heating business? Managing, Mrs. Fletcher, Jeremy replied politely. How's your new sunroom? Any issues with the climate control? He'd installed the system last year, one of his last major jobs before things turned south. It's fine, she said dismissively, though Douglas says we should have gone with a more established company. The implications stung. Gardner Heating and Cooling had been established for 40 years under his father. Before Jeremy could respond, Beverly continued, I heard you were at the old Bennett place today. Curious choice for that Wells woman to rent, don't you think? The whole area's slated for redevelopment. Jeremy's interest peaked. Redevelopment? But that's residential zoning. Beverly's smile turned smug. For now, the council votes next month. On rezoning, Douglas has most members convinced already. She paid for her groceries. Do give Olivia my best. Such a shame about her mother. Jeremy watched Beverly leave, unease settling in his stomach, alongside hunger. If Fletcher's rezoning plan passed, dozens of modest homes would be vulnerable, including the Bennett cottage, and Mildred Wells would be out of a home she'd just moved into, and if Fletcher had his way, Jeremy's own home wouldn't be far behind. At home, Jeremy found Olivia working on homework at the kitchen table. She looked up as he entered, her eyes immediately searching his expression. Any luck today? She asked. Fixed Mr. Peterson's furnace, and got a new client on Cedar Lane, Jeremy answered, unpacking the groceries. Not a bad day. Olivia's shoulders relaxed slightly. That's good. Mrs. Wilson said I could stay for dinner, but I told her you'd probably want to cook. Jeremy felt a rush of both gratitude and guilt. His daughter was protecting his pride, even as the Wilsons tried to help. Smart thinking. I bought ingredients for spaghetti. As they prepared dinner together, Jeremy found himself thinking about Mildred Wells and her sparse cottage. Something about the elderly woman nagged at him. Her speech was educated, her mannerisms refined, yet she'd rented one of the most run-down properties in Willowvale. Dad? Olivia interrupted his thoughts. Is it true they're going to build fancy houses where the park is? Jeremy stirred the sauce. Who told you that? Kyle Fletcher. He was bragging about it at school. Said his dad is going to make Willowvale worth living in finally. The casual cruelty of children often reflected their parents' private conversations, Jeremy thought bitterly. Mr. Fletcher has plans, Jeremy admitted, but they haven't been approved yet. What happens if they build where people already live? Jeremy looked at his daughter, seeing the real question in her eyes. What happens to us? We'll be fine, he promised, hoping it wasn't a lie. The Gardners have been in this house since your grandfather built it. We're not going anywhere. Later that night, after Olivia had gone to bed, Jeremy sat at the kitchen table with bills spread before him. The bank notice demanded his attention, as did the final medical bill collection notice. Even with today's income, he was still short on this month's mortgage payment. His phone rang unexpectedly. Mildred Wells. Mr. Gardner? I apologize for calling so late, but the heater is making a strange noise again. I wouldn't bother you, but the temperature's dropping quickly. Jeremy glanced at the wall thermometer, already below freezing, and the storm was just beginning. I'll come right over, he said, already reaching for his coat. Outside, the snow was falling harder, transforming Willowvale into a treacherous winter landscape. As Jeremy's truck struggled up Cedar Lane, he spotted another vehicle parked near Mildred's cottage, a black SUV with the Fletcher Development logo on the door. It seemed Douglas Fletcher was wasting no time in pursuing his expansion plans, and elderly Mildred Wells was his next target. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Jeremy parked behind the Fletcher Development SUV, snow already accumulating on its windshield. Through Mildred's frosted window, he could see the silhouettes of two people in what appeared to be an intense conversation. One was certainly Mildred's small frame, while the other's broad shoulders and gesturing hands could only belong to Douglas Fletcher himself. The wind whipped around Jeremy as he approached the front door, carrying his toolbox. His knock interrupted whatever discussion was taking place inside. After a moment, Mildred opened the door, her expression a mixture of relief and tension. Mr. Gardner, thank you for coming so quickly, she said, stepping aside to let him in. Douglas Fletcher stood in the center of the small living room, his tailored overcoat and polished shoes absurdly out of place in the humble setting. The developer's surprise quickly morphed into a practiced smile. Gardner, what brings you out on such a nasty night? Ms. Wells called about her heater, Jeremy replied, stomping snow from his boots. I fixed it earlier today, but it seems to be acting up again. How fortunate she could reach you, Douglas remarked, his tone suggesting the opposite. I was just explaining to Ms. Wells the benefits of selling this property now before the winter really takes its toll on such an established structure. Mildred folded her arms across her chest. And as I was explaining to Mr. Fletcher, I have no interest in selling, regardless of how generously he values a home he describes as barely standing. Douglas sighed dramatically. I'm simply offering market value plus 20%. That's more than fair for a property that will require significant renovation before becoming part of our Willowvale Heights development. I believe Ms. Wells said she's not interested, Jeremy interjected, setting down his toolbox, and I should check that heater before the temperature drops any further. Douglas's smile tightened. Of course. Don't let me keep you from your work. He turned to Mildred. My offer stands for 2 weeks, Ms. Wells. After the rezoning passes, property values in this area will fluctuate dramatically. I'll keep that in mind, Mildred replied coolly. After Douglas departed, leaving tire tracks in the deepening snow, Jeremy followed Mildred to the utility room. That man has the subtlety of a bulldozer, Mildred muttered, which, I suppose, is fitting. Jeremy, smiled despite himself. Fletcher's not known for taking no for an answer. He's been trying to reshape Willowvale in his image since he moved here 5 years ago. And how do the townspeople feel about that? Those who benefit from his projects think he's a visionary. The rest of us... Jeremy trailed off, bending to inspect the heater. That's strange. What is it? The wiring I fixed earlier today has been tampered with again. Someone deliberately disconnected these connections. Jeremy held up the frayed wires. Did Fletcher go near the utility room while he was here? Mildred's eyes narrowed. He asked to use the bathroom. The utility room is right next door. Jeremy reconnected the wires properly, securing them more thoroughly this time. I wouldn't put it past Fletcher to create problems, so you'd be more willing to sell, especially with this storm coming in. Do you think he's done this before? Mildred asked, watching Jeremy work. Let's just say that several holdouts against his previous developments experienced mysterious plumbing issues, electrical problems, or heating failures during critical times. Jeremy stood, brushing dust from his knees. My father used to get calls to fix them. After he passed, those calls stopped coming to me. I see. Mildred's expression was unreadable. How much do I owe you for this visit? Nothing, Jeremy said firmly. This wasn't normal wear and tear, and I should have secured those connections better the first time. Mildred shook her head. Nonsense. You couldn't have anticipated sabotage. She pressed a $50 bill into his hand. I insist, and I'd like to install some security measures, perhaps motion-activated lights. Could you recommend someone? I can do it myself, Jeremy offered. Electrical work isn't my specialty, but I've installed plenty of security lights. Wonderful. Would tomorrow be too soon? I'll provide the equipment if you can pick it up. Money is no object when it comes to keeping unwanted visitors at bay. Jeremy nodded, though something about Mildred's phrasing struck him as unusual. For someone living in such modest circumstances, her casual approach to spending seemed incongruous. I'll stop by the hardware store in the morning, he promised. As Jeremy prepared to leave, Mildred handed him a thermos. Hot chocolate for the drive home. It's my special recipe. Might help keep the chill away. The gesture caught Jeremy off guard. It had been years since anyone had shown him this kind of thoughtfulness, the type Christina would have demonstrated. Thank tea. You, he said, genuinely touched. Just return the thermos when you come tomorrow, Mildred replied with a warm smile. And drive safely. The storm seems to be worsening. Indeed, the short drive home proved treacherous. The town's snowplows hadn't yet made it to the side streets, leaving Jeremy to navigate through several inches of fresh powder. When he finally arrived home, he found Olivia waiting up, despite the late hour. Dad, I was getting worried, she exclaimed, rushing to hug him. Sorry, Pumpkin, had an emergency call at Ms. Wells' place. Jeremy set down the thermos. You should be in bed. I couldn't sleep with the storm getting worse. The weatherman says it might be the biggest snowfall of the decade. All the more reason to get some rest. No school tomorrow if that's the case. Olivia eyed the thermos curiously. What's that? Hot chocolate from Ms. Wells. Want some? They shared the rich, creamy beverage at the kitchen table, Olivia wrapping her hands around the mug for warmth. Their aging heating system was working overtime, but struggling to keep up with the plummeting temperatures. This is the best hot chocolate I've ever had, Olivia declared. Is Ms. Wells nice? Seems to be. She's new in town, renting the old Bennett. A place. The haunted house. Olivia's eyes widened. Jeremy chuckled. It's not haunted, just old and neglected. Madison Wilson said a witch used to live there. Well, unless that witch is 90 years old and makes amazing hot chocolate, I think Madison's information is outdated, Olivia giggled, then grew more serious. Dad, I heard Kyle Fletcher telling his friends that his dad is going to own our house soon. Is that true? Jeremy's stomach tightened. He'd hoped to shield Olivia from their financial troubles, but Fletcher's son was making that impossible. No, that's not true, Jeremy said firmly. We're having some money problems, but I'm working on it. Is that why you took that job tonight in the storm? Because we need money? I took the job because someone needed help, Jeremy corrected gently. That's what your grandfather taught me, and what I'm teaching you. We help people who need it, regardless of what we get in return. Olivia considered this. But we do need the money, Jeremy sighed. Yes, we do, but that doesn't mean helping others becomes less important when times are tough. It means it becomes more meaningful. The next morning, Willowvale was transformed into a winter wonderland. Schools were closed, and many businesses wouldn't open due to nearly 18 inches of snowfall overnight, with more expected throughout the day. Jeremy awoke to the sound of his phone ringing. Philip Stone from the Bank. Jeremy, I'm calling about your mortgage payment, Philip began without preamble. I know it's late, Philip. I'm working on getting the funds together. It's more serious than a late payment this time, Philip replied, his voice carrying professional sympathy. The bank is considering accelerating your foreclosure timeline. Due to the pattern of late payments, Jeremy sat up straight. You can't do that? The agreement says I have 30 days. Technically, yes, but there's a clause about consistent delinquency. Look, Jeremy, I'm trying to help you here. There's a bank meeting tomorrow, and your case is on the agenda. If you could make even a partial payment today, it would strengthen your position. After hanging up, Jeremy stared at the ceiling. He needed to find work today, despite the storm. Pulling on his warmest clothes, he shoveled the driveway, then called Brian. Roads are a nightmare, Brian warned. Town's basically shut down. I need to work today, Brian. Any leads? Actually, yeah. Mrs. Hudson called the shop looking for you. Pipe burst at the community center. The place is being used as a warming station for people without heat. I'll head there now. The community center was bustling with activity when Jeremy arrived. Mayor Deborah Hudson, a practical woman in her 60s, greeted him with relief. Thank goodness you're here, Jeremy. Water's coming through the ceiling in the East Wing. We've got elderly folks and families with young children who need this space. Jeremy followed her to the affected area, where water dripped steadily from a ceiling panel. After locating the burst pipe in the crawl space above, he determined he needed parts from Peterson's Hardware. I'll call George to open the store, Mayor Hudson offered. While waiting for the parts, Jeremy helped distribute blankets and hot beverages to the people seeking refuge from the cold. In one corner, he spotted Mildred Wells serving soup. Ms. Wells, I didn't expect to see you here. Mildred looked up, seemingly unsurprised by his presence. I walked over when I heard the center needed volunteers. Figured I should contribute somehow. You walked? In this weather? That's over a mile from your place. I'm old, Mr. Gardner, not infirm, she replied with a twinkle in her eye. Besides, I grew up in Minnesota. This is merely a dusting by those standards. Jeremy couldn't help but smile at her spirit. I was planning to come install those security lights today, but I've got to fix a burst pipe here first. No rush. I've discovered the neighborly spirit of Willowvale is better protection than any security system. She nodded toward the families, huddled together. Though some neighbors seemed to be struggling more than others. Jeremy followed her gaze to a young mother trying to quiet a fussing infant, while her two older children sat wrapped in donated blankets. That's Lisa Murphy, Jeremy explained quietly. Her husband was laid off when the mill closed last year. They've been living with her parents, but their heating system can't handle the load during extreme weather. Mildred's expression softened. And the elderly gentleman by the window? Victor Thompson, retired schoolteacher. His pension barely covers his medications, let alone home repairs. You know everyone's story, Mildred observed. Small town, Jeremy shrugged. My father taught me that understanding people's circumstances helps provide better service. Can't fix what you don't understand. A wise philosophy that extends beyond heating systems, I imagine. Their conversation was interrupted by George Peterson arriving with the needed plumbing parts. As Jeremy prepared to tackle the repair, he noticed Douglas Fletcher entering the community center, accompanied by a photographer from the local newspaper. "Mayor Hudson," Fletcher called out jovially. "Fletcher Development would like to contribute to the emergency efforts." He handed over a check with much ceremony while the photographer snapped pictures. "Thank you, Douglas," Mayor Hudson said, accepting the donation. "Every bit helps during these difficult times." Fletcher surveyed the room with what appeared to be genuine concern, though Jeremy couldn't help but notice how his gaze lingered on those residents whose properties featured prominently in his development plans. "If only the town had more modern infrastructure," Fletcher lamented loudly enough for nearby ears. "My proposed development would include state-of-the-art utilities designed to withstand extreme weather events." Mayor Hudson's smile tightened. "Yes, well, Willowvale has weathered many storms before, Douglas. We'll get through this one too." As Fletcher continued his impromptu press conference, Jeremy focused on the pipe repair. He was deep in the ceiling, a crawl space, when he heard Fletcher's voice directly below. "Ms. Wells, what a surprise finding you here. I hope you've reconsidered my offer." Fletcher's tone was friendly yet persistent. "My position remains unchanged, Mr. Fletcher," Mildred replied, firmly. "Though I must say, your timing for these discussions shows remarkable opportunism." "I prefer to think of it as efficiency," Fletcher countered smoothly. "Speaking of which, I noticed Gardner working on your heating system last night. An old house requires constant maintenance. Wouldn't you prefer a modern home with reliable systems? One of our luxury condominiums, perhaps?" "I find character more appealing than convenience, Mr. Fletcher, and I value repairmen who arrive when called, rather than creating the need for their services." Jeremy almost dropped his wrench at Mildred's implication. From his vantage point, he couldn't see Fletcher's reaction, but the sudden silence spoke volumes. "That's a serious accusation, Ms. Wells," Fletcher finally said, his voice lowered. "Not an accusation at all," Mildred replied lightly. "Merely an observation about the importance of reliable service providers. Now, if you'll excuse me, there are people who need hot soup more than I need another sales pitch." By the time Jeremy descended from the crawl space, Fletcher had moved on to charm other community members, though his expression had lost some of its confidence. Mildred caught Jeremy's eye and gave him a subtle wink before returning to her volunteer duties. After completing the repair, Jeremy approached Mayor Hudson about payment. "The town's emergency fund is stretched thin, Jeremy," she admitted, "but we need your services now more than ever. Would you consider accepting a partial payment now with the remainder next week?" Under normal circumstances, Jeremy would have agreed without hesitation. But with the bank meeting tomorrow, he needed every dollar he could get. Before he could respond, Mildred appeared beside him. "Perhaps I could be of assistance. I'd like to donate to the emergency fund, specifically to cover essential services." She wrote a check and handed it to Mayor Hudson. "This should cover Mr. Gardner's fees and perhaps help a few others as well." Mayor Hudson's eyes widened at the amount. "This is extremely generous, Ms. Wells. I believe in supporting communities that support each other," Mildred said simply. With the community center repair complete and payment secured, Jeremy headed to Peterson's Hardware to purchase the security lights for Mildred's cottage. To his surprise, he found the store unusually busy despite the storm. "What's going on, George?" he asked as he selected the equipment. "Fletcher's people have been spreading rumors that the rezoning is a done deal," George explained grimly. "Folks are stocking up on supplies to make emergency repairs before property assessments. The vote isn't for another month," Jeremy pointed out. "Tell that to Fletcher. He's already got contractors measuring lots in the affected neighborhoods." Outside the hardware store, Jeremy encountered Philip Stone, clearing snow from his car. "Jeremy, just the man I wanted to see." The banker's expression was grim. "I've been trying to reach you." "What's wrong?" Jeremy asked, loading the security lights into his truck. Fletcher came to the bank this morning. He's offering to buy your mortgage debt. Jeremy froze. He can do that? The bank doesn't typically sell individual mortgages, but Fletcher made a compelling case about consolidating properties in his development area. Philip lowered his voice. I shouldn't be telling you this, but he specifically asked about your loan status. I think he's targeting holdouts, Jeremy. My house isn't even in his development zone, Jeremy protested. Not the current zone, no. But the proposed expansion that's up for vote next month, your street is phase 2 of the plan. The realization hit Jeremy like a physical blow. Fletcher wasn't just after Mildred's property, he wanted the entire neighborhood, including the house that had been in the Gardner family for generations. As Jeremy drove through the snow-covered streets toward Mildred's cottage, his mind raced with implications. If Fletcher acquired his mortgage and the rezoning passed, Jeremy could lose his home even sooner than he feared. He was so distracted that he almost missed the black SUV parked a block from Mildred's cottage. The Fletcher Development logo was partially obscured by snow, but unmistakable. 2 men sat inside watching the house. Instead of pulling into Mildred's driveway, Jeremy drove past and parked around the corner. Approaching on foot, he circled behind the neighboring properties until he reached Mildred's backyard. What he saw there made his blood run cold. A 3rd man in a Fletcher Development jacket was at Mildred's back door, attempting to force the lock. So focused was the intruder on his task that he didn't notice Jeremy's approach until it was too late. What the hell do you think you're doing? Jeremy demanded. The man startled, nearly dropping his tools. Gardner, this isn't what it looks like. Jeremy recognized him as Steve Baker, Fletcher's construction foreman. Really? Because it looks like breaking and entering to me. Mr. Fletcher asked me to check on Ms. Wells. Make sure her heating was working properly in this cold, Baker claimed unconvincingly, by breaking in through the back door. She's not answering the front, and with the temperatures dropping, save it. Jeremy cut him off. Ms. Wells is at the community center volunteering, and we both know Fletcher doesn't care about her well-being. Baker straightened, abandoning the pretense. Look, I'm just doing my job. Fletcher wants this property, and he's getting impatient with the old lady's stubbornness. So he sent you to what? Sabotage her home again? Or just frighten her into selling? Baker didn't respond, but his expression confirmed Jeremy's suspicions. Get out of here, Jeremy ordered, and tell Fletcher that if I catch any of his people near Ms. Wells' property again, I'm going straight to the sheriff. After Baker retreated, Jeremy quickly installed the security lights, adding motion sensors at all approach points to the cottage. He also checked the heating system thoroughly, securing all connections and adding tamper-evident seals that would show if anyone interfered with the equipment again. As he worked, Jeremy couldn't shake the feeling that the situation was escalating. From business pressure to something more sinister, Fletcher's willingness to use intimidation tactics against an elderly woman spoke volumes about his desperation to acquire these properties. The question was, why was this particular area so important to him? And why had Mildred Wells, with her refined manners and surprising generosity, chosen to rent the most vulnerable property in Fletcher's crosshairs? When Mildred returned from the community center several hours later, Jeremy briefed her on what had transpired, including the attempted break-in. I'm not surprised, she sighed, setting down her purse. Mr. Fletcher strikes me as a man accustomed to getting his way by whatever means necessary. This goes beyond aggressive business tactics, Jeremy insisted. Breaking into an elderly woman's home during a winter storm, that's criminal. Perhaps, Mildred mused. Mr. Fletcher believes I'm an easy target, a mistake many have made over the years. Something in her tone made Jeremy look at her more closely. For a moment, the frail elderly woman seemed to vanish, replaced by someone with steel in her spine and calculation in her eyes. "You're not afraid," Jeremy realized aloud. "Not of bullies like Douglas Fletcher," Mildred confirmed. "But I am concerned about the other residents who may not be as resilient as I am. People like you, for instance." "Me?" "Mr. Stone from the bank mentioned your situation when I opened my account. He speaks highly of you, but worries about your financial stability." Jeremy felt a flush of embarrassment. Philip shouldn't be discussing my finances with others. He wasn't gossiping, Mildred assured him. "I inquired about reputable local businesses when I moved in, including service providers. Your name came up along with the challenges you faced since your wife's passing." Before Jeremy could respond, his phone rang. "Tracy Wilson." "Jeremy, is Olivia with you?" Tracy's voice was tight with worry. "No, she should be at your place. I dropped her off this morning when I went to fix the community center pipe." "She was, but she left about an hour ago. Said she needed to get something from your house for her science project. She should have been back by now." Fear gripped Jeremy's heart. "I'll head home right now. Call me if she shows up," he explained the situation to Mildred as he hurriedly packed his tools. "Go," she urged, "and call me when you find her. This storm is worsening by the hour." As Jeremy rushed to his truck, the wind howled around him, driving the snow horizontally across his path. The temperature had dropped further, and darkness was setting in early under the heavy cloud cover. Somewhere in this intensifying blizzard, his daughter was alone, possibly hurt or lost. And with night falling, the already dangerous situation was becoming potentially deadly. Jeremy's truck slid treacherously along the snow-packed roads as visibility deteriorated by the minute. The wipers struggled against the relentless snowfall, creating only brief windows of clarity through the windshield. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the steering wheel, every nerve in his body alert with fear for Olivia. "Please be home," he whispered to himself. "Please, just be home." When he finally reached their street, conditions had worsened to near whiteout. He barely made out their driveway, now buried under fresh snow. No footprints were visible. The storm had erased any trace of Olivia's passage if she'd been here at all. Jeremy burst through the front door, calling his daughter's name. Silence answered him. The house was cold, their struggling heating system unable to maintain warmth during his absence. He searched room by room, finding no sign of Olivia or any indication she'd returned for her science project. His phone rang. "Brian." "Wilson. Any sign of her?" Brian asked immediately. "Nothing, she's not at the house. I've called some neighbors, no one's seen her. Tracy's beside herself." Brian's voice tightened. "Jeremy, the highway patrol just closed Route 7. They're reporting wind gusts over 50 miles per hour and temperatures dropping below zero with the wind chill." The implications didn't need stating. A 12-year-old girl alone in these conditions faced life-threatening danger. "I'm going to look for her," Jeremy decided. "She must have gotten disoriented in the storm." "I'll meet you at the corner of Maple and Elm in 5 minutes, Brian said without hesitation. "We'll search together." As Jeremy grabbed extra blankets and hot packs from the emergency kit, his phone rang again, a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Gardner? This is Officer Roberts from Willowvale Police. We received a call about your daughter." Jeremy's heart stopped. "Is she—" "She's alive," Officer Roberts assured him quickly. "She's at the Fletcher residence on Ridgeway Hills. Apparently she fell and sprained her ankle near their property. Their son Kyle found her and brought her inside." Relief flooded through Jeremy, immediately followed by confusion. "What was she doing near the Fletcher's house? That's over 2 miles from here." "You can ask her yourself. I've been asked to escort." "You there, given the dangerous road conditions?" "I'm outside your house now." Sure enough, the flashing lights of a police SUV were visible through Jeremy's front window. He called Brian with the update, then bundled up to face the elements once more. The drive to Ridgeway Hills was tense, even in the police vehicle equipped for winter conditions. Officer Roberts maintained a careful speed, the cruiser's spotlight, sweeping the roadside occasionally to ensure they stayed on course. "Any idea what your daughter was doing out in this weather?" Officer Roberts asked. "None," Jeremy admitted. "She was supposed to be at the Wilsons' house all day." "Kids this age." Officer Roberts shook his head. "My son once walked 3 miles in summer heat because he thought his friend was having a birthday party. Turned out he had the wrong day." Jeremy nodded absently, his mind racing with questions. Why would Olivia go anywhere near the Fletchers' property? She barely knew their son Kyle, and had expressed dislike for his boasting about his father's development plans. Ridgeway Hills emerged from the swirling snow, an exclusive neighborhood of imposing homes set on manicured lots, now blanketed in white. The Fletcher residence dominated the highest point, its stone facade and soaring windows illuminated against the darkening sky. Jeremy barely waited for Officer Roberts to stop before jumping out and rushing to the front door. It opened before he could knock, revealing Beverly Fletcher in an expensive cashmere sweater, her expression a mixture of concern and subtle superiority. "Jeremy, thank goodness you've made it safely. Do come in." She ushered him into a grand foyer with marble, floors and a crystal chandelier. "Olivia's resting in the family room. Dr. Wilson was kind enough to stop by and examine her ankle. Just a mild sprain, fortunately." Jeremy followed Beverly through a formal living room that could have fit his entire house within its walls. Douglas Fletcher stood by a massive stone fireplace, tumbler of amber liquid in hand. He nodded at Jeremy without warmth. "Gardner, quite the storm out there." Jeremy acknowledged him with a brief nod, his attention focused entirely on locating his daughter. In the adjacent family room, Olivia sat on a plush sectional sofa, her elevated ankle wrapped in a compression bandage. Her face lit up when she saw her father. "Dad!" She attempted to stand, but winced at the movement. Jeremy rushed to her side, gathering her into a tight hug. "You scared me half to death. What were you thinking going out in this storm? And what were you doing all the way out here?" Olivia's eyes darted nervously to Kyle Fletcher, who stood awkwardly by the doorway. "I needed to talk to Kyle about something important." "Something that couldn't wait until after a blizzard?" Jeremy kept his voice gentle despite his concern. "It was about the development plans," Olivia admitted quietly. "I heard at school that Mr. Fletcher already had the approval to tear down our house. I thought if I talked to Kyle I could find out if it was true." Jeremy closed his eyes briefly, understanding, washing over him. His daughter had been trying to protect their home in the only way she could think of. "Officer Roberts will be filing a report about this incident," Douglas Fletcher interjected, moving into the room. "Ridgeway Hills has strict trespassing policies, though of course we're making an exception given the emergency circumstances." "She wasn't trespassing," Kyle suddenly spoke up, surprising everyone. "I invited her over to work on a science project, but the invitation got mixed up and she came today instead of next week." Douglas shot his son a sharp look. "You invited the Gardner girl to our home?" Kyle straightened his shoulders. "Yes, Dad, we're partners for the science fair." Jeremy studied Kyle, recognizing the lie for what it was, an attempt to protect Olivia from his father's wrath. Despite his dislike for the Fletcher family, he felt a flicker of respect for the boy's unexpected courage. "Well, that changes things," Beverly said smoothly, though her smile had tightened. "Still, venturing out in such conditions was extremely dangerous." "Olivia, you could have been seriously hurt or worse." "I know, I'm sorry," Olivia murmured. "The important thing is, she's safe now," Jeremy said, gathering Olivia's coat and backpack. "We should get her home before the roads become completely impassable." "Nonsense," Douglas declared with forced joviality. The storm is expected to intensify. Overnight, the Highway Patrol has issued a travel advisory recommending no unnecessary movement until morning. You and Olivia will stay in our guest suite. The offer, delivered as a statement rather than a question, left Jeremy little room to argue, especially with Officer Roberts nodding in agreement about the deteriorating conditions. "That's very generous," Jeremy managed, discomfort evident in his tone. "Not at all," Beverly replied. "It's the least we can do. Besides, it will give the children more time to discuss their science project." Her smile didn't reach her eyes, making it clear she didn't believe Kyle's story any more than Jeremy did. With no viable alternative, Jeremy helped Olivia to the guest suite, a space larger than their entire first floor at home. While Olivia settled onto the king-sized bed, Jeremy stepped into the attached bathroom to call Brian and update him on the situation. "Staying at the Fletchers?" Brian sounded incredulous. "That's like a sheep accepting the wolf's dinner invitation." "I don't have much choice," Jeremy sighed. "The roads are too dangerous, and Olivia can't walk on that ankle. Just watch your back." Fletcher doesn't do anything without an angle. After ending the call, Jeremy returned to find Olivia examining the luxurious surroundings with wide eyes. "Their bathroom has a TV in it, Dad," she whispered, "and the towels are fluffier than our winter blankets." Jeremy smiled despite himself. "Don't get used to it. We're heading home first thing tomorrow." Olivia's expression sobered. "I'm sorry for scaring you. I thought if I could talk to Kyle directly, I could find out what his dad was really planning. Everyone at school says we're losing our house." Jeremy sat beside her on the bed. "Olivia, listen to me. I promise you that I'm doing everything I can to keep our home. But even if the worst happens, which it won't, our family isn't about a building. It's about us, together. But it's where all our memories of Mom are," Olivia whispered, tears forming in her eyes. Jeremy felt his throat tighten. "The memories are in here," he tapped his heart, "not in the walls." A soft knock interrupted them. Kyle stood at the door, holding a tray with hot chocolate and sandwiches. "Mom thought you might be hungry," he said, avoiding eye contact with Jeremy. "That was thoughtful." "Thank you, Kyle," Jeremy replied, taking the tray. The boy lingered, shifting uncomfortably. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry about the stuff I said at school, about your house and everything. My dad doesn't tell me the real plans. He just says things to make it sound like he controls everything." Olivia watched him curiously. "So, you don't know if our street is really part of the development?" Kyle shook his head. "I've seen some maps in his office, but I don't understand all of it. I just know he gets really mad when people don't sell to him." "Kyle!" Douglas's sharp voice called from downstairs. "That's enough disturbing our guests. Come help your mother in the kitchen." The boy gave an apologetic shrug before hurrying away. Jeremy closed the door behind him, processing this new information. It seemed Fletcher's own son harbored doubts about his father's methods, suggesting cracks in the developer's carefully constructed image. After Olivia fell asleep, exhausted from her ordeal, Jeremy found himself restless. He slipped quietly from the guest suite, intending to get a glass of water from the kitchen. As he descended the grand staircase, he heard raised voices from Douglas's study. "This doesn't change anything," Douglas was saying forcefully. "The rezoning vote is practically guaranteed. 3 council members confirmed their support this morning, but the environmental survey," a man's voice Jeremy didn't recognize began, "can be managed." Douglas cut him off. "The old wetlands designation is outdated. Our consultants will provide updated findings that support development." "And what about the holdouts? The Wells woman, the gardeners? We can't proceed with Phase 1 if those properties remain occupied." Jeremy froze on the stairs, straining to hear Douglas's response. "Gardner's financial situation will force him out within weeks," Douglas replied confidently. "As for the Wells woman, I'm pursuing multiple strategies to ensure her cooperation. What about simply raising our offer? Everyone has a price, Douglas laughed darkly. Some people respond better to pressure than incentives. Trust me, by the time the vote happens, every property we need will be secured. Jeremy had heard enough. He retreated silently back up the stairs, mind racing. Fletcher's plans were even more calculated than he'd suspected, and the developer seemed unnervingly confident about acquiring both his and Mildred's properties. Back in the guest suite, Jeremy sent a text message to Mildred, updating her on Olivia's situation and warning her about Fletcher's continued interest in her property. To his surprise, she responded immediately despite the late hour. "Glad Olivia is safe. Don't worry about me. Perhaps this unexpected sleepover will provide valuable insights into Mr. Fletcher's true nature. Observe carefully." The message struck Jeremy as odd, almost as if Mildred expected him to gather intelligence rather than simply endure an uncomfortable night under his adversary's roof. Again, he wondered about the elderly woman's true motivations for moving to Willowvale. Morning arrived with blinding brightness as sunlight reflected off the pristine snow. The storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed landscape of sculptured drifts and crystal-clear skies. Jeremy woke to find Olivia already up, gazing out the window at the winter scene. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Like everything bad got covered up and made clean." The poetic observation reminded Jeremy so much of Christina that for a moment he couldn't speak. Instead, he joined his daughter at the window, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "How's your ankle feeling?" "Better. Still hurts, but I can put some weight on it now." A knock at the door announced Beverly, perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. "Good morning. Douglas has arranged for the driveway to be plowed, and breakfast is ready downstairs whenever you're ready." The breakfast spread in the Fletcher dining room was elaborate. Belgian waffles, fresh fruit, artisanal pastries, and a variety of gourmet coffee options. Kyle sat sullenly at the table, picking at his food while his father reviewed documents. At the head of the table, the gardeners. Douglas looked up, folding away his papers. "I trust you slept well." "Very well, thank you," Jeremy replied politely, helping Olivia to a chair. "We appreciate your hospitality, but we should get home as soon as possible." Of course, Douglas nodded. "Though before you go, I wanted to discuss a business proposition with you." Beverly shot her husband a warning look, which he ignored. "Jeremy, you're a skilled technician. One of the best in the area by all accounts. Fletcher Development is expanding our property management division, and we need someone to oversee HVAC maintenance for our residential and commercial properties." Jeremy paused with a forkful of waffle halfway to his mouth. "You're offering me a job?" "A position," Douglas corrected. "Salaried with benefits. The compensation would be substantial, certainly enough to resolve your current financial difficulties." The implication was clear. Accept the job, and Fletcher would ensure the bank backed off from foreclosure. "That's a generous offer," Jeremy said carefully. "Unexpected, given our past interactions." Douglas waved a dismissive hand. "Business is business. You have skills we need, and we can provide security your family deserves." He glanced meaningfully at Olivia, "especially given recent events that have demonstrated the precariousness of your situation." The manipulation was so transparent that Jeremy almost laughed. Fletcher was using Olivia's accident and their enforced overnight stay to position himself as a benevolent protector, while simultaneously reminding Jeremy of his vulnerability. "I'd need time to consider such a significant change," Jeremy replied non-committally. "Of course, take the weekend to think it over." Douglas slid a business card across the table. "Call me Monday with your decision." After breakfast, Officer Roberts, arrived to drive them home, reporting that the main roads had been plowed, but side streets remained challenging. As they prepared to leave, Kyle approached Olivia awkwardly. "Sorry again about yesterday, and thanks for not telling my dad I was lying about the science project." Olivia shrugged. "I'm sorry too, for showing up like that." "Maybe we could actually work together," Kyle suggested hesitantly. "I'm pretty good at science." The tentative olive branch between the children stood in stark contrast to the undercurrent of hostility between their fathers. Jeremy found himself hoping that the younger generation might find common ground where the older one had failed. The drive home with Officer Roberts was quiet, Olivia dozing against Jeremy's shoulder in the back seat of the police SUV. As they approached their street, Jeremy spotted a familiar figure shoveling snow from his driveway. Brian Wilson, red-faced from exertion. "Your friend's been at it since dawn," Officer Roberts commented. "Cleared your walkway too." Indeed, Jeremy's driveway and the path to their front door had been meticulously cleared. Brian waved as they pulled up, leaning on his shovel. "Welcome home, adventure girl," he called to Olivia as Officer Roberts helped her from the vehicle. "Tracy's got hot cinnamon rolls waiting at our place when you're settled." Once inside their modest home, the contrast with the Fletcher's mansion couldn't have been more stark. The living room furniture showed years of wear. Family photos hung in mismatched frames, and the kitchen appliances were at least a decade old. Yet to Jeremy, the familiar surroundings felt infinitely more comforting than the Fletchers' sterile luxury. After getting Olivia situated on the couch with fresh ice for her ankle, Jeremy stepped onto the front porch with Brian. Fletcher offered. "Me a job," Jeremy said without preamble. Brian's eyebrows shot up. "You're kidding." "Property management position, substantial salary, benefits, the works. And what does he want in exchange? Your soul or just your house?" Jeremy snorted. "Probably both." He didn't say it outright, but the implication was clear. Take the job, drop any opposition to his development plans, and my financial problems disappear. "You're not considering it," Brian stated rather than asked. "I'd be working for a man who deliberately sabotages an elderly woman's heating during a blizzard to pressure her into selling," Jeremy replied. "What do you think?" Brian clapped him on the shoulder. "That's the Jeremy Gardner I know. But what are you going to do about the bank? Philip called the shop looking for you this morning. Sounded urgent." Before Jeremy could respond, his phone rang. Mildred Wells. "Mr. Gardner, I'm so relieved to hear Olivia is safe," she said when he answered. "I was wondering if you might stop by my cottage when convenient. There's something important I'd like to discuss regarding our mutual acquaintance, Mr. Fletcher." "I can come by in about an hour," Jeremy offered, curiosity piqued. "Excellent. And perhaps bring that bank notice you've been carrying in your pocket. The one you keep looking at when you think no one is watching." Jeremy froze, startled by her perceptiveness. "How did you—" "I've lived a long time, Mr. Gardner. You learn to recognize worry when you see it. We'll talk soon." As she hung up, Jeremy found himself wondering once again who Mildred Wells really was, and why she seemed so interested in his financial struggles. The elderly woman had positioned herself at the center of Fletcher's development plans, demonstrated unusual resources and insights, and now appeared ready to involve herself in Jeremy's bank troubles. What he couldn't possibly know was that his visit to her cottage would reveal secrets that would change not just his life, but the future of Willowvale itself. Jeremy left Olivia resting at the Wilsons' house while he drove to Mildred's cottage on Cedar Lane. The roads were clearer now, but ice patches remained treacherous. As he approached her driveway, he noticed tire tracks from an unfamiliar vehicle, fresh ones made after the storm had passed. Mildred opened the door before he could knock, as if she'd been watching for his arrival. Today, she wore a navy blue wool dress instead of her usual casual attire, and Jeremy caught a glimpse of an expensive-looking pearl necklace beneath her cardigan. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said, ushering him inside. I hope Olivia is recovering well from her adventure. She's tough, like her mother was. Jeremy stamped snow from his boots. You mentioned wanting to discuss Fletcher, among other things. But first, I'd like you to see something. She led him to her kitchen table, where several official-looking documents were spread out. Jeremy recognized property surveys, zoning maps, and what appeared to be municipal planning reports. Where did you get these? He asked, studying a detailed map of Fletcher's proposed development that included areas he'd never seen publicly discussed. Let's say I have access to certain resources, Mildred replied vaguely. The question is, what do you see when you look at these plans? Jeremy examined the documents more carefully. Fletcher's development wasn't just about luxury homes. It encompassed nearly a third of Willowvale, including the town's main commercial district, several historic neighborhoods, and environmental areas that were supposed to be protected. This is massive, Jeremy breathed. He's planning to tear down half the town. Phase 1 alone displaces 47 families, Mildred confirmed. Phase 2 adds another 62. By completion, most of Willowvale's original residents would be forced to relocate. But the environmental protections, Jeremy pointed to an area marked as wetlands. Fletcher has commissioned new environmental assessments, claiming the wetlands have dried up due to climate change. His experts will testify that development poses no ecological risk. Jeremy sank into a chair. This is worse than I imagined. The town council has no idea about the full scope. Oh, but they do, Mildred said quietly. 3 council members have already received substantial campaign contributions from Fletcher Development. 2 others have been promised lucrative consulting positions once they leave office. How do you know all this? Mildred poured 2 cups of tea from an ornate silver service that Jeremy hadn't noticed before. I've spent my life dealing with men like Douglas Fletcher. They follow predictable patterns: bribery, intimidation, manipulation of regulatory processes. The methods rarely change. Something in her tone made Jeremy look at her more carefully. You talk like you have experience with large-scale development projects. I do. Mildred sat across from him. Which brings me to why I wanted to see your bank notice. Jeremy reluctantly pulled the foreclosure warning from his pocket. Mildred examined it carefully, her expression unreadable. First National Bank of Willowvale, she noted. Philip Stone is the loan officer? Yes, he's been trying to help, but the bank board is pressuring him to accelerate the foreclosure process because Fletcher has made it clear he wants to purchase your mortgage debt, Mildred stated rather than asked. Jeremy's eyes widened. How did you know that? Fletcher's acquisition strategy requires controlling properties before rezoning approval. He can't risk holdouts complicating his timeline. Mildred set down the notice. Tell me, what would you do if you didn't have to worry about losing your house? The question caught Jeremy off guard. I'd continue running my father's business, help people who need heating and cooling work done honestly, for fair prices. And if you had resources to expand, to hire employees, maybe help others struggling, families in town. I don't understand what you're getting at, Jeremy said, though excitement began stirring despite himself. Mildred reached into a leather portfolio and withdrew a checkbook. Jeremy, what if I told you I could pay off your mortgage entirely, right now, today? Jeremy nearly choked on his tea. I'm sorry, what? Your balance is $47,000, Mildred continued calmly. A substantial sum for you, but manageable for me. Ms. Wills, you're living in a rented cottage. You can't possibly have that kind of money. Mildred smiled. Appearances can be deceiving, Jeremy. I rent this cottage because it suits my current purposes, not because I lack alternatives. She began, writing in the checkbook. Jeremy watched in stunned silence as she filled out a check for the full amount of his mortgage. I can't accept this, he protested. I don't even know you. You know enough, Mildred replied. You know I'm an elderly woman whose heating system You've repaired twice without overcharging. You know I needed help during a blizzard, and you came without hesitation. You know Fletcher's people tried to break into my home, and you stopped them. That's what anyone would do. No, Jeremy. It's what you would do. Most people would have minded their own business. She tore out the check and slid it across the table. This comes with conditions, however. Jeremy's heart sank. Of course there were conditions. What kind of conditions? First, you continue operating your business exactly as you have been. Honest work, fair prices, helping people who need it most. That's not a condition, that's just me. Second, when Fletcher makes his final push to acquire properties in this neighborhood, you stand with the other residents who want to fight his plans. Jeremy nodded slowly. And third, you trust me when I tell you that things in Willow Vale are about to change dramatically and not in the way Douglas Fletcher expects. Before Jeremy could ask what she meant, the doorbell rang. Through the window, he saw Philip Stone's car in the driveway. Expecting him? Jeremy asked. I called the bank this morning, Mildred confirmed. Asked Philip to stop by to discuss a significant transaction. Philip entered looking confused and slightly overwhelmed. He nodded at Jeremy before addressing Mildred. Ms. Wells, thank you for reaching out. When you mentioned wanting to make a large deposit, I thought it best to handle the matter personally. Excellent service, Mr. Stone. I'd like to pay off Mr. Gardner's mortgage in full. She handed Philip the check. Philip's eyes widened as he read the amount. This is quite generous, Ms. Wells, but there are procedures for third-party mortgage payments, disclosure requirements. I'm familiar with banking regulations, Mildred assured him. This is a personal loan to Mr. Gardner at 0% interest, with which he'll pay off the bank mortgage immediately. Jeremy can then repay me according to whatever schedule works for his family's budget. Philip looked between them, uncertainly. Jeremy, you're comfortable with this arrangement? Jeremy felt like he was in a dream. Yes. If Ms. Wells is serious about this, completely serious, Mildred confirmed. Though I do have one question for you, Mr. Stone. Has Fletcher Development approached your bank about acquiring other mortgages in this area? Philip shifted uncomfortably. I can't discuss confidential bank business. Of course not, but as a community member concerned about aggressive development practices, I hope the bank considers the impact on long-time Willowvale residents before facilitating such transfers. The subtle warning in Mildred's tone wasn't lost on Philip. The bank always considers community impact in our decisions, he replied carefully. After Philip left with the mortgage payment, Jeremy remained at Mildred's kitchen table, struggling to process what had just happened. Why? He asked finally. Why would you do this for me? Mildred refilled their teacups. Jeremy, may I tell you about my late husband, Samuel? Jeremy nodded, sensing this was important. Samuel grew up poor in rural Wisconsin. His father was a mechanic who often repaired equipment for neighbors who couldn't afford to pay. Samuel learned that technical skills, combined with compassion, could change lives. She reached for a small framed photograph Jeremy hadn't noticed before, a black and white image of a handsome man in military uniform. After the war, Samuel used his GI benefits to study engineering. He developed several patents for heating and cooling systems that became industry standards. We were blessed with success, but Samuel never forgot his father's lessons about helping others. He sounds like a good man, Jeremy said softly. He was, and he would have recognized a kindred spirit in you. Mildred's eyes sparkled with unshed, or tears. Samuel always said that the measure of a person wasn't in their bank account, but in what they did when they saw someone in need. Ms. Wells, please call me Mildred. Mildred, this is incredibly generous, but I feel like there's something you're not telling me about who you are, why you're really in Willow Vale. Mildred was quiet for a long moment, seeming to weigh her response. You're very perceptive. There are indeed things I haven't shared, but not from any desire to deceive you. Sometimes the truth must be revealed gradually when the time is right. Before Jeremy could press further, his phone rang. Brian Wilson. Jeremy, you need to get to the town hall immediately, Brian said urgently. Fletcher called an emergency town meeting. He's claiming the storm damage proves Willowvale needs immediate infrastructure improvements that only his development can provide. That's ridiculous. The storm cleanup is already underway. Tell that to the crowd gathering here. He's got charts and graphs showing how his project would make the town more resilient to severe weather. Jeremy looked at Mildred, who had been listening to his side of the conversation. Go, she urged. This is the beginning of Fletcher's final push. The residents need to hear from someone they trust. Will you come with me? Mildred hesitated. Perhaps it's better if I remain in the background for now. But Jeremy... She reached into her purse and withdrew an iPhone that looked far more sophisticated than anything an elderly woman on a fixed income should own. Take this with you. It has video recording capability. Document what Fletcher says. Tonight, you may need that evidence later. As Jeremy drove toward Town Hall, his mind reeled with questions about Mildred's true identity. The expensive phone, her knowledge of Fletcher's plans, her casual ability to write a $47,000 check. Nothing added up to a retired woman living modestly in a rented cottage. The town hall parking lot was packed when he arrived. Inside, he found nearly 200 residents crowded into a space designed for half that number. Fletcher stood at the front with a professional presentation set up, flanked by several men in expensive suits Jeremy didn't recognize. Mayor Hudson looked uncomfortable. At the podium, I want to emphasize that this is an informational meeting only. No votes will be taken tonight, and the formal rezoning hearing isn't for another 3 weeks. Fletcher stepped forward smoothly. Thank you, Mayor Hudson. Citizens of Willowvale, last night's storm demonstrated the vulnerability of our aging infrastructure. Power outages, frozen pipes, heating failures, problems that modern construction methods can prevent. He clicked to a slide showing damage photos from around town. Fletcher Development is prepared to invest over $50 million in creating a resilient, sustainable community that can weather any storm. Jeremy noticed several of the photos showed damage to properties Fletcher wanted to acquire, including an image of the broken pipe at the community center. His cynical mind wondered if all the storm damage had been entirely natural. An elderly man Jeremy recognized as Victor Thompson raised his hand. Mr. Fletcher, your project would tear down homes that have sheltered families for generations. Where are we supposed to go? An excellent question, Fletcher replied with practiced sympathy. Our relocation assistance program provides fair market value plus 20% for affected properties. Additionally, we're partnering with developments in neighboring towns to offer comparable housing at reduced costs. Tracy Wilson stood up from near the back. Comparable housing where? The neighboring developments you mentioned are 40 minutes away from our jobs, our schools, our community connections. Growth requires adaptation, Fletcher responded. We're not just preserving Willowvale, we're enhancing it for future generations. Jeremy watched the crowd's reaction. Some residents seemed swayed by Fletcher's polished presentation, while others looked skeptical. The developer had clearly learned from previous encounters, presenting his plans as community improvement rather than profit-driven development. What about environmental concerns? Called out Janet Reed, the council member who had consistently opposed Fletcher's plans. The wetlands designation has protected that area for decades. Fletcher clicked to another slide showing environmental survey results. New studies indicate the wetlands have significantly diminished due to climate change. Our development will actually improve water management through modern drainage systems. Jeremy remembered Mildred's warning about manipulated environmental assessments. He discreetly activated the video recording function on her phone, capturing Fletcher's claims about the environmental surveys. As the presentation continued, Jeremy noticed Kyle Fletcher sitting alone in the back corner, looking increasingly uncomfortable as his father made promises about community benefits and resident relocations. Their eyes met briefly, and Kyle gave him a subtle nod toward the exit. Curious, Jeremy slipped out of the meeting hall. Kyle was waiting by the front steps. "Mr. Gardner, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course. What's on your mind?" Kyle glanced around nervously. "What my dad said in there about helping people relocate. It's not true. I've seen the real plans. Most families won't get enough money to buy comparable homes anywhere nearby." Jeremy kept his expression neutral. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Olivia could have died yesterday, and I realized I've been part of something that's hurting people I actually like." Kyle's voice was barely above a whisper. "My dad thinks I don't pay attention to his business, but I do. He's planning things that will destroy this town." "What kind of things?" "He's already got contracts to build a shopping complex where the elementary school is. The school board doesn't know yet. He's waiting until after the rezoning to announce it. And the community center where you fix the pipe? He owns the mortgage on that building. If the town can't afford repairs, he'll foreclose and tear it down." Jeremy felt sick. Fletcher's plans were even more comprehensive than the documents Mildred had shown him. "Kyle, this is important information. Would you be willing to tell other people what you just told me?" The boy looked terrified. "If my dad found out I was talking to you, I can't, but maybe there's another way." He pulled out his phone and showed Jeremy a folder of photos, documents from Fletcher's office showing the real development timeline, correspondence with town officials, and financial projections that painted a very different picture than the public presentation. "I took these over the past few months," Kyle admitted. "I kept thinking I should do something with them, but I didn't know who to trust." Jeremy looked at the photos on Kyle's phone, then at Mildred's device still recording the meeting audio through the building's windows. Two different sources of evidence against Fletcher's plans, provided by the most unlikely allies, a mysterious elderly woman with hidden resources and the developer's own conflicted son. "Kyle, I know this is hard, but these photos could save your neighbors' homes." "I know," Kyle said miserably, "but if I get caught helping you, what if there was a way to get this information to the right people without it being traced back to you?" Kyle looked up hopefully. "How?" Jeremy thought about Mildred's confidence that things in Willowvale were about to change dramatically. Whatever secrets she was keeping, she clearly had resources and connections that could make a difference. "Let me talk to someone first. Can you meet me tomorrow after school? Somewhere private, where we can figure out the best way to use this." "Evidence? The old Miller farm has been empty for years," Kyle suggested. "There's a barn about a mile past the covered bridge. I could bike there after school." As they shook hands on the plan, Jeremy realized he was now part of a conspiracy involving a mysterious benefactor who had just paid off his mortgage and the son of his family's greatest threat. The irony wasn't lost on him. Sometimes the most unlikely alliances formed when people discovered they shared common ground in opposing injustice. Back inside the meeting, Fletcher was fielding increasingly pointed questions from concerned residents. Armed with Kyle's revelations and his video evidence, Jeremy felt ready to challenge the developer's carefully crafted narrative. But as he prepared to rejoin the crowd, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Jeremy, this is Mildred. Don't confront Fletcher tonight. Trust me, there's a better way. Come to my cottage after the meeting. It's time you learned the whole truth about who I am." Jeremy stared at the message, his pulse quickening. Whatever Mildred was about to reveal, he sensed it would change everything, not just for his family, But for the entire future of Willowvale, the town meeting had devolved into heated exchanges between Fletcher's supporters and longtime residents by the time Jeremy slipped out. He drove through Willowvale's quiet streets towards Cedar Lane, his mind churning with questions about what Mildred was about to reveal. The woman who had casually written a check for his mortgage was clearly more than she appeared. Mildred's cottage glowed warmly in the darkness, but as Jeremy approached, he noticed changes that hadn't been there earlier. Professional-grade security cameras were now mounted at strategic points around the property, their red indicator lights blinking steadily. Motion sensor lights illuminated the entire perimeter, and he spotted what looked like a sophisticated alarm system keypad visible through the front window. Quite an upgrade for an afternoon, Jeremy muttered to himself as he knocked. Mildred opened the door, but she was no longer the modest elderly woman in worn cardigans. She wore an elegant black suit that looked tailored specifically for her, understated but clearly expensive jewelry, and her posture had straightened into something more commanding. Most strikingly, her eyes held a sharpness that spoke of boardroom, battles rather than quiet retirement. "Jeremy, thank you for coming. Please sit down." Her voice had changed too, still warm, but with an underlying authority that hadn't been there before. Jeremy settled into the chair across from her, noting that she'd moved to the sofa where she could maintain eye contact. The power dynamic had shifted completely. "I owe you an explanation," Mildred began. "My name is indeed Mildred Wells, but I haven't been entirely truthful about my circumstances." "Who are you really?" Jeremy asked directly. "I'm the chairman and majority shareholder of Wells Foundation, one of the largest charitable organizations in New England. My late husband Samuel and I built it from nothing into an institution that has distributed over $2 billion to communities in need." Jeremy sat back in his chair, stunned. $2 billion. "Our foundation focuses on preserving small communities threatened by predatory development, supporting local businesses, and protecting families from displacement." Mildred's smile was rueful. "When Douglas Fletcher appeared on our radar 18 months ago, I decided to investigate his methods personally. So, you've been living here undercover?" "Reconnaissance, you might say. The most effective way to understand a community's true needs is to become part of it, not to observe from a distance." Jeremy processed this revelation. The cottage, the modest lifestyle, necessary camouflage. Fletcher's type tends to be more careless around people they perceive as powerless. Mildred stood and walked to a laptop computer that definitely hadn't been there during his earlier visit. "Would you like to see what we've discovered about his operations?" The screen showed financial documents, corporate filings, and what appeared to be surveillance footage from various locations. "Fletcher Development has executed this exact strategy in 7 communities across 3 states, Mildred explained. "Small towns with limited resources, aging populations, and property values that make wholesale acquisition feasible." "What happened to those other towns?" "Clarksville, Pennsylvania. Population dropped from 2,400 to 800 after Fletcher's development. Most original residents couldn't afford the increased property taxes and were forced to relocate." Mildred clicked to another screen. "Millbrook, New York. 3 generations of family businesses closed when Fletcher redirected the main commercial district." Jeremy studied the before and after photos of communities that had been transformed beyond recognition. "This is what he plans for Willowvale?" "Precisely. But with one crucial difference, Willowvale has something the others didn't. Which is me." Mildred's eyes gleamed with quiet determination. "And now, you." She returned to her seat, leaning forward slightly. "Jeremy, I've been watching you for months. The way you treat your customers, your relationship with Olivia, your integrity when Fletcher tried to buy your cooperation. You represent everything Samuel and I hope to find in our community partnerships." "Community partnerships?" The Wells Foundation doesn't just write checks and walk away. We identify local leaders who share our values, then provide them with resources to strengthen their communities from within. Mildred paused. I'd like to offer you such a partnership. Jeremy felt overwhelmed. I don't understand what you're asking. I'm proposing to establish a Willowvale Community Development Fund with you as the local administrator. Initial funding would be $5 million, focused on preserving affordable housing, supporting local businesses, and creating economic opportunities that benefit longtime residents. The number was so staggering that Jeremy couldn't immediately process it. $5 million, for starters. The Foundation's board approved the allocation this morning, contingent on finding the right local partner. Mildred handed him a folder. Someone who understands the community's needs and has the trust of its people. Jeremy opened the folder to find detailed plans for housing rehabilitation, small business loans, educational scholarships, and infrastructure improvements, all designed to strengthen Willowvale against exactly the kind of displacement Fletcher represented. This is incredible, but I'm not qualified to manage something this large. I fix heating systems, not communities. Samuel started with a wrench and a tool belt too, Mildred reminded him. The technical skills that make you good. At your job, problem-solving, attention to detail, understanding systems are exactly what community development requires. Before Jeremy could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from Kyle Fletcher. Emergency. Dad knows about our conversation. Meet me at the old Miller farm now. I have to go, Jeremy said, showing Mildred the message. Kyle Fletcher, he's been helping me gather evidence against his father. Mildred's expression shifted to concern. That's very dangerous for the boy. Douglas Fletcher doesn't tolerate betrayal, even from family. I can't abandon Kyle now. He's risking everything to help his neighbors. Then we both go, Mildred decided, and we take backup. Backup? Mildred picked up her phone and dialed a number. Robert, it's Mother. I need you and the security team at the Miller farm immediately. Yes, tonight. Bring legal documentation for a potential custody situation. She ended the call and turned to Jeremy. My son Robert heads our foundation's security operations. He's been coordinating with local authorities since I arrived in Willowvale. You have a security team? When you're worth several $100 million, Jeremy, certain precautions become necessary, especially when you're confronting people like Douglas Fletcher. They drove to the Miller farm in Mildred's rental car, which Jeremy now realized was a Mercedes with tinted windows and what appeared to be additional security features. The abandoned barn sat in darkness, but they could see Kyle's bicycle leaning against the weathered wooden structure. Kyle? Jeremy called out as they approached. It's Jeremy Gardner. The barn door creaked open, and Kyle emerged, looking terrified. Mr. Gardner, I'm so sorry I got you involved in this. My dad, he's not who I thought he was. What happened? Jeremy asked, noting the boy's disheveled appearance and what looked like fresh bruises on his face. He found the photos I took. He was waiting in my room when I got home from the town meeting. Kyle's voice shook. He said if I ever betrayed the family again, there would be consequences I couldn't imagine. Mildred stepped forward. Kyle, I'm Mildred Wells. I'm here to help you. The old lady from the cottage. Kyle looked confused. But you're different than I appeared, yes. Sometimes we all have to wear masks to protect ourselves. Mildred's voice was gentle but firm. What exactly did your father say to you? He showed me surveillance footage of you and me talking outside the town meeting, Kyle said to Jeremy. He knew everything we discussed, and he said if I didn't help him discredit you and Ms. Wells, he'd make sure I never saw my friends again. Jeremy, who felt anger rising. He threatened to send you away? Worse. He said he'd make sure everyone in town knew I was a traitor to my own family, that he'd ruin any chance I had of a normal life here. Headlights approached the farm, and Jeremy tensed until he recognized Sheriff Anderson's patrol car, followed by a black SUV. Two men in dark suits emerged from the SUV, while Sheriff Anderson approached with his hand resting casually on his service weapon. "Evening, folks," Sheriff Anderson said, though his eyes were alert. "Got a call about a possible domestic situation involving a minor." "Sheriff, this is my son, Robert," Mildred introduced the older of the two men. "He's been coordinating with your department on the Fletcher investigation, Ms. Wells, or should I say Ms. Josephine Wells." Sheriff Anderson's tone was respectful but questioning. Jeremy's head snapped toward Mildred. "Josephine Wells, but you said your name was Mildred." "Mildred Josephine Wells," she clarified. "I've used my middle name professionally for decades, but my family calls me Mildred." She turned to Sheriff Anderson. "What's the status of the warrant?" "Judge Harrison signed it an hour ago," the sheriff confirmed. "We have sufficient evidence to investigate Fletcher Development for fraud, extortion, and conspiracy." "What warrant?" Jeremy asked, feeling like events were moving faster than he could follow. Robert Wells stepped forward. "Mr. Gardner, we've been building a case against Douglas Fletcher for months. Tonight's evidence of child endangerment gave us the final justification we needed. Child endangerment, threatening a minor with social isolation and exile to coerce. Cooperation in illegal activities," Robert explained. "Kyle's willing to testify about the physical and psychological pressure his father has applied." Kyle nodded vigorously. "I have recordings of our conversations on my phone. My dad doesn't know I've been documenting everything since I started feeling uncomfortable about his plans." Sheriff Anderson looked at Jeremy. "We're going to need your testimony about the attempted break-in at Miss Wells's property and any evidence you have of Fletcher's fraudulent claims about his development plans." Jeremy pulled out Mildred's phone. "I recorded his entire presentation tonight, and Kyle has photographs of documents showing Fletcher's real intentions." "Excellent," Robert said. "We'll also need Kyle to remain in protective custody until we can arrest Fletcher and his associates." "I can't go home," Kyle realized. "If my dad finds out I've been helping you..." "You won't be going home," Mildred assured him. "At least not tonight. Sheriff Anderson has arranged temporary placement with a family court-approved foster situation." "Actually," Jeremy found himself saying, "Kyle could stay with Olivia and me. We have a spare room, and Olivia would be thrilled to have company." Mildred looked surprised but pleased. "That's very generous, Jeremy." "It's what neighbors do," Jeremy replied, echoing the lessons his father had taught him. Sheriff Anderson nodded approvingly. "I'll need to verify that with social services, but given the circumstances, it seems like the best option. Kyle, are you comfortable with that arrangement?" "Yes, sir. Mr. Gardner's been the only adult who's treated me like I matter, not just like Douglas Fletcher's son." As they prepared to leave the farm, Jeremy turned to Mildred. "The Community Development Fund you mentioned, is the offer still open?" "More than ever," she replied. "What changed your mind?" Jeremy looked at Kyle, then at the sheriff and Robert Wells. "I realized I can't protect my family or my community by just fixing heating systems. Sometimes you have to fix the whole system." Mildred smiled. "Samuel would have said exactly the same thing." The convoy of vehicles left the Miller farm together, Sheriff Anderson leading the way, followed by Jeremy with Kyle in his truck, then Mildred and Robert in the Mercedes. As they drove back toward town, Jeremy's phone rang with a call from Brian Wilson. "Jeremy, where are you? Fletcher's been calling around looking for you. He seems pretty agitated about something." "I'm heading home with Kyle Fletcher. He's staying with us tonight." "Kyle Fletcher? Jeremy, what the hell is going on?" "Things are about to change in Willowvale, Brian. Big changes. I'll explain everything tomorrow, but right now I need to focus on keeping Kyle safe. Is Olivia okay?" "She's fine, but Fletcher's been threatening his own son for trying to help us. We're not dealing with just aggressive business tactics anymore." After ending the call, Jeremy glanced at Kyle in the passenger seat. The boy was staring out the window at the passing streetlights, his expression mixing fear with something that might have been hope. "Kyle, what you did tonight took real courage. Your father may not appreciate it now, but someday you'll understand that you chose the right side." "I just want people to stop getting hurt because of my family's money," Kyle replied quietly. "And I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror without feeling ashamed." Jeremy thought about the last 18 months of financial stress, the constant worry about losing his home, the weight of trying to protect Olivia from problems she was too young to understand. Now, with Mildred's Josephine's help, those problems were solved. But more importantly, he had the chance to help solve similar problems for others. "Kyle, when this is all over, would you be interested in helping with community projects? Using your father's development knowledge for good instead of for profit?" Kyle's face lit up for the first time all evening. "You mean like affordable housing, helping families stay in their homes?" Exactly like that, as they pulled into Jeremy's driveway. Both their phones buzzed simultaneously with text messages from unknown numbers. "You have no idea what you've started. This won't end well for any of you. DF." Jeremy showed Kyle the message. "Looks like your father knows we're working together. He's going to try to destroy both of us," Kyle said matter-of-factly. "That's what he does when people oppose him." Jeremy looked at his modest home, thinking about the Community Development Fund, the evidence they'd gathered, and the powerful allies they'd gained. Maybe, but this time, he picked the wrong fight. As they walked toward the house, Jeremy's phone rang. One more time, Josephine Wells. "Jeremy, I thought you should know. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit will be joining the investigation tomorrow. Douglas Fletcher's problems extend far beyond Willowvale, and the Foundation's board has just approved an additional $10 million for our Community Development Fund." $10 million, Jeremy repeated, still struggling to process the scale of resources now available. 15 million total. "We've decided to make Willowvale our flagship community preservation project. After tonight, I'm convinced we've found the right partners to make it work." Jeremy looked at Kyle, then at his house where Olivia was waiting, safe and warm. 24 hours ago, he'd been facing foreclosure and fighting to save his family home. Now, he was part of something much larger, an effort to save an entire community. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time in months, Jeremy felt like they had a fighting chance. Jeremy woke at 5:30 to the sound of vehicles in his driveway. Through his bedroom window, he spotted 2 black SUVs and an unmarked police car. His blood pressure spiked until he recognized Robert Wells stepping out of the lead vehicle, followed by Sheriff Anderson. Kyle was already awake in the spare room when Jeremy knocked. "I heard the cars," the boy said quietly. "Is it starting?" "Looks like it." Downstairs, Olivia sat at the kitchen table in her pajamas, staring out the window with wide eyes. "Dad, why are there so many cars outside? And why is Kyle here?" Jeremy sat beside his daughter. "Kyle's staying with us for a few days while some grown-up problems get sorted out, and those people outside are here to help." "Help with what?" "With making sure our town stays the kind of place where good people can live and raise their families." Sheriff Anderson knocked before Jeremy could explain further. With him stood a woman in a navy blue suit who looked like she meant business. "Jeremy, this is Agent Sarah Martinez from the FBI Financial Crimes Unit," Sheriff Anderson said. "Agent Martinez, Jeremy Gardner, and Kyle Fletcher." Agent Martinez shook Jeremy's hand. "Mr. Gardner, thank you for your cooperation in this investigation. Kyle, we've spoken with your mother. She's flying in from Seattle this morning." Kyle's face showed relief mixed with anxiety. "Is she okay? My dad didn't—" "Your mother is fine," Agent Martinez assured him. "She had no knowledge of your father's illegal activities and has been very cooperative since we contacted her last night." Jeremy poured coffee for the adults, while Olivia helped Kyle make breakfast. The surreal domestic scene contrasted sharply with the federal investigation unfolding in his kitchen. We executed search warrants at Fletcher development offices and the Fletcher residence at 6 this morning, Agent Martinez explained. Douglas Fletcher was arrested on charges of fraud, extortion, conspiracy, and money laundering. We've also arrested 3 of his associates. Money laundering? Jeremy asked. Fletcher's been using his development projects to clean money from some unsavory sources. The scale is much larger than what he was planning for Willowvale. Agent Martinez accepted the coffee gratefully. Your town was actually small potatoes compared to his operations in other states. Kyle looked up from his cereal. What happens to all the people who gave him money for houses that were never going to be built? We'll work to recover as much as possible through asset forfeiture, Agent Martinez replied, though it will take time to untangle his financial web. Sheriff Anderson leaned against the counter. The immediate question is what happens with the town council meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Fletcher was supposed to present his final development proposal. The proposal dies with his arrest, Agent Martinez said. All Fletcher development contracts and options on local properties are now under federal investigation and effectively frozen. Jeremy felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. So the families facing pressure to sell can stay in their homes without further harassment, Sheriff Anderson confirmed, at least from Fletcher. Robert Wells entered through the back door, carrying a briefcase and looking like he'd been up all night. Good morning, everyone. Jeremy, my mother asked me to brief you on the Foundation's immediate response plans. He set the briefcase on the kitchen table and withdrew several folders. We're fast-tracking the Community Development Fund launch. Local attorneys are filing incorporation papers this morning for the Willowvale Community Preservation Trust. That fast, Jeremy marveled. When the Wells Foundation moves, it moves quickly, Robert smiled. We've learned that delayed action allows problems to multiply. Agent Martinez stood to leave. Mr. Gardner, we'll need you to testify before a federal grand jury in about 2 weeks. Kyle, you'll have a separate hearing since you're a minor. But your testimony will be crucial. After the law enforcement officials departed, Jeremy found himself alone with Kyle and Olivia. The house felt oddly quiet after the morning's intensity. So what happens now? Kyle asked. Now we figure out how to build something better than what your father was planning, Jeremy replied. Olivia looked between them. Are we rich now? Because of Ms. Wells helping us? Jeremy considered how to explain the situation to a 12-year-old. We're not rich, Pumpkin, but we're secure. And more importantly, we have the chance to help make sure other families are secure too. Like a superhero team, Olivia asked hopefully. Kyle laughed. The first genuine laugh Jeremy had heard from him. Kind of, except instead of fighting bad guys with superpowers, we're fighting them with building codes and zoning laws. That sounds way more boring than superheroes, Olivia declared. Sometimes the most important fights are boring, Jeremy said, but they matter just as much. His phone rang. Tracy Wilson. Jeremy, have you seen the news? They're saying Douglas Fletcher was arrested by the FBI this morning. Please tell me you and Olivia are safe. We're fine, Tracy. Better than fine, actually. I'll explain everything later, but Kyle Fletcher is staying with us for a few days. Kyle. Fletcher? Honey, are you sure that's wise? Kyle's the one who helped expose his father's crimes. He's a good kid who got caught in a bad situation. After updating Tracy, Jeremy called Brian at the garage. You're not going to believe what's been happening, Brian said immediately. Half the town's calling about Fletcher's arrest. The other half is calling about some fancy foundation that's supposedly investing millions in Willowvale. Both stories are true. And Brian, I'm going to need to cut back on regular repair work for a while. I've been asked to help coordinate the Foundation's community projects. Coordinate millions of dollars. Brian sounded skeptical. Jeremy, you fix heaters. I know. It's crazy, but sometimes crazy is exactly what's needed. Later that morning, Jeremy drove to Josephine Wells' cottage with Kyle and Olivia. The security upgrades were even more apparent in daylight. Professional cameras, reinforced doors, and what appeared to be bulletproof glass in the windows. Josephine had greeted them wearing jeans and a cable-knit sweater, looking more like the modest elderly woman Jeremy had first met. But her posture and bearing still radiated the authority he'd glimpsed the night before. "Kyle, how are you holding up?" she asked with genuine concern. "Better than I expected," Kyle admitted. "Is it weird that I feel relieved my dad got arrested?" "Not at all. Sometimes we love people who make terrible choices, and watching them face consequences can actually be a relief." Josephine gestured toward the living room. "I have some news about your mother." They settled into chairs, while Josephine opened her laptop. "Beverly Fletcher filed for divorce this morning. She's also requesting full custody and asking the court to change your last name back to her maiden name, Morrison." Kyle's eyes widened. "She wants to change my name?" "Only if you're comfortable with it. She's trying to protect you from being associated with your father's crimes." Josephine's expression was gentle. "Your mother has also accepted a position with the Wells Foundation, overseeing family services for communities affected by predatory development. My mom's going to work for you. She has a master's degree in social work and 15 years of experience in family counseling," Josephine explained. "Skills we desperately need for our community projects." Jeremy watched Kyle process this information. The boy's entire world had been upended in less than 24 hours, but he seemed to be adapting with remarkable resilience. "What about school?" Kyle asked. "I mean, everyone's going to know what my dad did." "Actually," Olivia spoke up, "I think people are going to think you're really brave for helping stop him." "Your sister's probably right," Josephine agreed. "Though if you'd prefer, we can arrange for you to finish the school year in Boston while things settle down here." "No," Kyle said firmly. "I want to stay in Willowvale. I want to help fix what my dad broke." Josephine smiled approvingly. "Then let's talk about how to do that." She pulled up architectural drawings on her laptop. "These are preliminary plans for affordable housing units to replace properties Fletcher was planning to demolish. Jeremy, we'd like your input on the heating and cooling systems design." Jeremy studied the plans, recognizing energy-efficient designs that would keep utility costs low for residents. "These are excellent, much better than anything Fletcher was proposing." "Kyle, these drawings show a community center where your father planned to build luxury condominiums," Josephine continued. "It would include after-school programs, job training, and small business incubation space." Kyle examined the plans with growing excitement. "This is what you meant about fixing the whole system?" "Exactly," Jeremy nodded. "Instead of displacing families, we're creating opportunities for them to thrive." Josephine closed the laptop. "The foundation board has approved the full development plan. Construction can begin within 6 months, creating approximately 200 jobs and preserving affordable housing for over 400 families." "How is this possible so quickly?" Jeremy asked. "We've been planning for this moment since I arrived in Willowvale," Josephine admitted. "Douglas Fletcher wasn't the only one thinking several moves ahead." Olivia raised her hand like she was in school. "Ms. Wells, are you like a good billionaire instead of a bad billionaire?" Josephine laughed. "I certainly try to be, Olivia. What do you think makes the difference?" "Good billionaires help people stay in their homes. Bad billionaires make them leave." "That's a very wise observation." Jeremy's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You have no idea who you're dealing with." "DF." He showed the message to Josephine, who frowned. "Douglas shouldn't have access to his phone from federal custody." "Maybe it's not from him," Kyle suggested nervously. "My dad has business partners who aren't normal business partners." Josephine immediately called Robert. "We need enhanced security protocols activated immediately. Douglas may have associates still at large who view our investigation as a threat." Within minutes, the cottage was surrounded by additional security personnel. Through the window, Jeremy spotted Sheriff Anderson's patrol car taking position at the end of the driveway. "This is more serious than I realized," Jeremy said. "Financial crimes at this level often involve dangerous people," Josephine explained. "But you and your family are under our protection now." Kyle looked frightened. "I should have thought about this before I agreed to testify. What if they come after Mr. Gardner and Olivia because they're helping me?" "Kyle, we're not going to abandon you because there might be risks," Jeremy said firmly. "That's not how families work, but I'm not your family." "You are now," Olivia declared matter-of-factly. "Dad says when people look out for each other, that makes them family, and you looked out for the whole town." Josephine watched this exchange with evident emotion. Samuel always said that the most important infrastructure in any community isn't roads or buildings. It's the connections between people who care about each other. Sheriff Anderson knocked and entered without waiting for permission. "We've got movement on the Fletcher case. 3 of Douglas's business associates have been arrested in Boston, but 2 others are still unaccounted for. Agent Martinez wants everyone connected to this case to maintain heightened security until they're located." "What does that mean practically?" Jeremy asked. "It means Kyle doesn't go anywhere alone. Your daughter has a security escort to and from school, and you don't take any repair calls to unfamiliar locations," Sheriff Anderson explained. "Probably for the next week or 2. "This is because I helped you," Kyle said miserably. "I've put everyone in danger." "No," Josephine corrected firmly. "This is because your father chose to work with criminals, and because we chose to stop him. The danger existed whether we acted or not. We just brought it into the light where we can deal with it." Jeremy looked around the room at his daughter, Kyle, Josephine, and Sheriff Anderson. 2 days ago, his biggest worry had been making the mortgage payment. Now he was part of a federal investigation, managing millions in community development funds and under protection from potentially dangerous criminals. "Is it wrong that I'm not sorry we did this?" he asked aloud. "It would be wrong if you were sorry," Josephine replied. "Doing the right thing often comes with complications, but that doesn't make it less right." As if to emphasize the point, Jeremy's phone rang with a call from Victor Thompson, the elderly retired teacher. "Jeremy, I heard about what you've been doing with that foundation. My heating system finally gave up completely last night. Is there any chance?" "I'll be right over, Mr. Thompson," Jeremy said immediately. Sheriff Anderson held up a hand. "Not alone, you won't." "Then we all go," Josephine decided. "It's time the community sees that the Wells Foundation isn't just about grand plans. We're here to help with immediate needs too." As they prepared to leave for Victor Thompson's house, Jeremy realized that his life had fundamentally changed. He was no longer just Jeremy Gardner, heating repair technician. He was Jeremy Gardner, community development coordinator, protecting families from displacement while under federal protection from dangerous criminals. The transformation was surreal, but as he watched Kyle help Olivia put on her coat and Josephine gather tools to assist with the repair call, Jeremy felt a sense of purpose that went far beyond anything he'd experienced since Christina's death. They were building something together, not just heating systems or housing developments, but a community where people took care of each other. And despite the risks and complications, Jeremy knew this was exactly where he was supposed to be. 3 weeks later, Jeremy stood in the packed Willowvale Community Center watching Mayor Hudson call the emergency town council meeting to order. The transformation in both the room and the town had been remarkable. Where Fletcher's security team had once intimidated residents, now families sat together planning their community's future. Before we discuss the Wells Foundation proposal, Mayor Hudson announced, "I have some important updates on the Fletcher investigation." Agent Martinez stepped forward. I'm pleased to report that the final 2 associates in Douglas Fletcher's criminal network were apprehended yesterday in Miami. The immediate security threat to Willowvale has been eliminated. Applause filled the room. Jeremy felt a weight lift from his shoulders. No more security escorts, no more looking over their shoulders. Kyle, seated beside him, smiled for what seemed like the first time in weeks. Additionally, Agent Martinez continued, asset recovery has exceeded our expectations. We've been able to return funds to victims across multiple states, and significant resources will be available for community restoration projects. Mayor Hudson nodded toward Jeremy. Which brings us to tonight's main agenda item. Jeremy Gardner will present the Willowvale Community Preservation Trust proposal. Jeremy rose, still adjusting to his new role, but increasingly comfortable with it. 3 weeks ago, many of you were facing forced displacement from homes your families had occupied for generations. Tonight, we're here to discuss not just preserving those homes, but strengthening our entire community. He clicked to the first slide of his presentation, showing before and after architectural renderings. The Wells Foundation has committed $25 million to a comprehensive revitalization program that will benefit every resident of Willowvale. Murmurs of amazement rippled through the crowd. Even Jeremy still marveled at the numbers involved. Phase 1 includes energy-efficient retrofits for over 200 existing homes, reducing utility costs by an average of 40% while preserving the character that makes Willowvale special. Mrs. Thompson raised her hand. Jeremy, this sounds wonderful, but what's the catch? Nobody gives away $25 million without expecting something in return. Jeremy smiled, having anticipated this question. The catch, Mrs. Thompson, is that we all commit to being the kind of community worth investing in. The foundation requires local matching contributions, not money, but volunteer hours, community participation, and looking out for our neighbors. Like a modern barn raising, called out Walter Brown from the back. Everyone contributes what they can. Exactly like that, Jeremy agreed. Phase 2 creates the Willowvale Artisan District, providing affordable workspace for local craftspeople, artists and small manufacturers. Instead of chain stores, we'll have businesses owned by people who live here. Kyle stood up from his seat. Can I say something? Jeremy nodded encouragingly. Over the past 3 weeks, Kyle had become increasingly involved in the planning process, his insights into development practices proving invaluable. My father saw Willowvale as something to be replaced, Kyle said, his voice clear and confident. Mr. Gardner and Ms. Wells see it as something to be improved. The difference is that improvement means the people who are already here get to stay and benefit. Dorothy Clark began clapping, and soon the entire room joined in. Kyle's transformation from privileged developer's son to community advocate had won over even the most skeptical residents. Phase 3, Jeremy continued, establishes the Willowvale Community Bank, owned by residents and focused on supporting local families and businesses rather than outside investors. Philip Stone, still the town's primary banker despite First National's acquisition by a regional chain, looked intrigued. Jeremy, community banking is complex, the regulatory requirements alone, which is why we're partnering with the New England Community Banking Consortium, Jeremy replied. They'll provide technical expertise while we maintain local control. Josephine Wells, still maintaining her modest appearance despite her revealed identity, stood from her seat near the front. I'd like to address the sustainability question that's probably on everyone's minds. The room quieted respectfully. Despite her deception about her circumstances, Josephine had earned genuine affection from Willowvale residents through her consistent helpfulness and community involvement. "The Wells Foundation doesn't do charity projects," she began. "We create sustainable systems that generate ongoing benefits. Every dollar invested in Willowvale will be structured to create additional value for generations." She moved to stand beside Jeremy. But more importantly, this project succeeds because it's being led by someone who grew up here, understands your needs, and has your trust. Jeremy represents everything we hope to find in a community partner, Brian Wilson called out from the middle of the room. "So what happens to Jeremy's heating business? He's been fixing our furnaces since his dad passed." "Gardner, heating and cooling isn't going anywhere," Jeremy assured him. "But we're expanding into sustainable energy systems, training local residents as certified technicians, and creating jobs that keep young people in Willowvale instead of forcing them to leave for opportunities." "Like an apprenticeship program?" asked Lisa Murphy, the young mother Jeremy had met at the community center during the storm. "Exactly. We're partnering with the State Technical College to offer certifications in green energy systems, building efficiency, and sustainable construction. Students can earn while they learn, working on real projects in their own community." The questions continued for another hour, covering everything from property taxes to environmental impact. Jeremy answered what he could, deferred to Josephine on foundation policy, and admitted when he didn't know something, but promised to find out. Finally, Mayor Hudson called for the formal vote. All in favor of accepting the Wells Foundation proposal and establishing the Willowvale Community Preservation Trust. Hands rose throughout the room, not unanimously, but an overwhelming majority. Jeremy felt a surge of pride mixed with the weight of responsibility. "Motion carries," Mayor Hudson announced. "Jeremy, congratulations. You're officially Willowvale's Community Development Director." After the meeting, Jeremy found himself surrounded by residents wanting to discuss specific projects, share ideas, or simply express gratitude. Kyle and Olivia helped distribute information packets, while Josephine fielded questions from potential business partners. "Mr. Gardner?" A voice behind him belonged to Tyler Morrison. Kyle's new legal name had been officially changed the previous week. "Could I talk to you for a minute?" Jeremy turned to see Beverly Fletcher, now Beverly Morrison, approaching with her son. She looked years younger than she had during her marriage to Douglas, and her smile seemed genuine rather than performative. "Beverly, I'm glad you could make it tonight. I wouldn't have missed it. This is exactly the kind of project I hoped to be part of when I accepted the position with the Wells Foundation." She glanced around the bustling community center. 3 weeks ago, this room was full of people afraid they were going to lose their homes. Tonight, they're planning how to improve them. "And it's because Kyle had the courage to stand up to his father," Jeremy reminded her. Kyle, now Tyler, looked embarrassed but pleased. "I just did what felt right." "Which is exactly what your new community needs," Josephine said, joining their conversation. "Beverly, how are you settling into your role overseeing family services?" "Better than I expected. It turns out that understanding how development can harm families makes me pretty good at designing programs to protect them." Beverly's smile was wry. "Douglas always said my social work degree was a waste of time. Turns out it was the most valuable education I ever received." As the crowd began to thin, Jeremy noticed Agent Martinez approaching with a serious expression. "Jeremy, I have some news about Douglas Fletcher's sentencing hearing." The group around Jeremy quieted, sensing the importance of the moment. "Fletcher pleaded guilty to all federal charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 12 years in federal prison. He'll also be required to pay full restitution to all victims." 12 years, Tyler repeated quietly. "I know it's complicated having him be your father," Jeremy said gently. "It is," Tyler admitted, But I'm glad he can't hurt anyone else for a long time. Agent Martinez nodded. The judge specifically noted Tyler's cooperation in her sentencing comments. She said his testimony demonstrated that integrity can emerge even from corrupt circumstances. What about the people who lost money in his schemes? Asked Josephine. Asset forfeiture recovered about 80% of investor funds. The remaining losses will be covered by the Federal Victim Compensation Fund. Agent Martinez looked around the group. All of you should be proud. Your actions prevented Fletcher from victimizing additional communities. After Agent Martinez departed, Jeremy walked outside with his expanded family, Olivia, Tyler, Beverly, and Josephine. The April evening was warm, with spring flowers blooming in planters that the garden club had installed throughout downtown. "Dad," Olivia said, taking his hand, "do you think Mom would be proud of what we're doing?" Jeremy squeezed her hand. "I think your mom would be amazed. She always believed in helping people, but I don't think she ever imagined we'd be able to help on the scale. She would have loved Tyler," Olivia added matter-of-factly. Tyler smiled. "I wish I could have met her." "You would have," Beverly said softly. Christina Gardner had a reputation for taking in strays and making them part of the family. She would have seen through your father's influence to the good person underneath. They paused at the corner where Jeremy would turn toward home, while the others headed to their temporary housing. Josephine had purchased a modest Victorian home on Elm Street, while Beverly and Tyler were renting an apartment above the bookstore. "Until they found something permanent." "Josephine," Jeremy said, "I keep expecting to wake up and find this was all a dream. 6 months ago, I was struggling to pay basic bills. Now I'm managing community development projects worth millions of dollars." "6 months ago, you were already doing community development," Josephine corrected. "You were just doing it one heating system at a time, one family at a time. Now you have resources that match your heart, but what if I mess it up? What if I make decisions that hurt people instead of helping them?" Josephine smiled. "Then you'll fix your mistakes and keep trying. That's what Samuel did and what every good leader does. The difference between people like you and people like Douglas Fletcher isn't that you don't make mistakes. It's that you care when you do." Tyler looked between the adults. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Gardner? When all this started, did you ever think it would end up like this?" Jeremy considered the question. "When your father threatened to foreclose on my house, all I wanted was to protect Olivia and keep our home. I never imagined we'd end up protecting the entire town. But now that we have, now I understand what my father meant when he said that fixing heating systems was really about taking care of people. We're just taking care of more people now." As they said their goodnights, Jeremy and Olivia walked home through streets that looked the same as always, but felt fundamentally different. The familiar houses now represented security rather than vulnerability. The neighbors they passed offered waves and thanks rather than worried glances. "Dad," Olivia said as they reached their front door, "Tyler asked me if we're rich now." "What did you tell him?" "I said we're not rich like his dad used to be rich, but we're rich in better ways." Jeremy unlocked the door to their modest home, paid for, secure, and surrounded by a community they'd helped preserve. "What kind of ways?" "We're rich in people who care about us. We're rich in being able to help other people. And we're rich in not having to worry about losing our house anymore." Jeremy hugged his daughter tightly. "That's exactly the right kind of rich to be." Inside, Jeremy checked his phone to find a text message from Brian Wilson. "Jeremy, Mrs. Patterson's furnace is acting up again. Could you stop by tomorrow morning? And congratulations on everything. Your dad would be proud." Jeremy smiled as he typed back, "I'll be there at 8. Some things never change." But as he looked around their living room, at the photographs of Christina and his father, at the comfortable furniture they'd been able to keep, and at the community Development plans spread across the dining table. Jeremy knew that everything had changed. He was still Jeremy Gardner, heating technician. But now he was also Jeremy Gardner, community development director. He was still Olivia's father and Harold Gardner's son. But now he was also Tyler Morrison's guardian figure and Beverly Morrison's colleague. Most importantly, he was still a man who believed in helping his neighbors. The scale had simply grown from one heating system at a time to one community at a time. As Jeremy turned off the lights and headed upstairs, he reflected on the lesson Josephine had taught him. Sometimes extraordinary change begins with ordinary. Kindness, a heating repair for an elderly woman, a fair price when money is tight, a willingness to help even when it's inconvenient. 6 months later, at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the first completed affordable housing units, Jeremy would stand before a crowd of hundreds, residents, officials, and community leaders from across New England who had come to see the Willow Vale model in action. But tonight, he was simply a single father tucking his daughter into bed, grateful for the warmth of their home and the security of their community. Tomorrow, he would fix Mrs. Patterson's furnace, review construction plans for the artisan district, and continue building something extraordinary from the foundation of ordinary human decency. In Willow Vale, Vermont, a miracle had indeed happened, not through magic or luck, but through the simple recognition that communities thrive when people take care of each other. And sometimes, that's all the miracle anyone really needs. The end. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss this. Just click to watch. And don't forget to subscribe. It would mean a lot.